Happy New Year, everyone. This week on Lather Talk, our guest is Rafa from Xicano Design. We talk about how he got into wet shaving, graphic design, and how design plays a role in our purchases. Stay tuned for the episode, coming right up. Hello and welcome to Lather Talk. This is the first episode of 2020, and so we're back again with my co-host Gerard.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
And we have special guest Rafa from Xicano Design.
How you guys doing?
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming on today's episode, Rafa. One big thing is we just want to hear a little bit about Rafa's kind of story of wet shaving and how he's kind of contributing into the community right now. So Rafa, why don't you first off share, how did you get into wet shaving in the first place?
Well, thanks guys for having me. I am honored to have been your first guest of this 2020 of the decade. So starting out, it's probably going to ruin your podcast. So good choice. I got started about 5.5 years ago, give or take, could be 6. It's really strange. I'll go really quick into this because it becomes a ridiculous story, but it's so ridiculous I have to tell it. I ran out of Barbasol shaving cream, and I was going to go to the store, and I was already shopping on Amazon. Not a sponsor, but I was like, I'm going to look for shaving cream on Amazon, and the price was like 3 times what it is at the store at the time on Amazon. Must have been shipping. I'm like, what the heck? And then all of a sudden, you know, algorithms suggest things to me and they start popping up a bunch of these old school shavings. And that's pretty much how I got started. My very first actual soap was a non-scented WSP little tin. That was my very first soap. I didn't know what I was doing. And then my second actual set, my actual soap was the Sapona Feature Veracino 70th year edition. That was my actual full set. And when I started using that, I pretty much fell in love with shaving. And that's before I grew the beard out. I just love the shaving process. I love being in the bathroom, taking time for yourself, smelling good. I was always into colognes. So that's pretty much how I just stumbled upon it. Just the internet and Amazon telling me, buy this. Nothing spectacular, but just so weird that it's because I ran out of Barbasol. So...
So a question for you, right? So what were you using hardware wise during, because you got the WSP soap and the Saponico, what was like your first brush? Because we've heard some really funny stories about the rando brushes people start out with.
Yeah, my very first brush, I can't remember the first brush. I'll go to the first razor immediately.
Sure,
because it was a Merkur 34C. Because people like us, in my opinion, I think, who go into the hobby and go down the rabbit hole, probably are big into researching stuff tons before they buy it. So after the soap, I said, well, what razor should I buy? And it was probably a week later because I shaved with my Mach, whatever the heck I had at the time. And so a week, whenever that happened, I was on the internet reviews and, you know, comments, and it just wound up that the general consensus seemed like a good, sturdy, mild, medium shave was the 34C. So my first one was the 34C.
That was also my first razor for what it's worth.
I think I saw the 34C, but then the 23C was like, it had the same sort of like ratings, and then it was like $15 cheaper, so I ended up buying that.
Oh, yeah, okay. So you were ahead of your time, knowing to do a budget buy instead.
I always just say, you know, we think with our wallets first, and so it always starts. It started there in the Amazon search.
Yeah. Geez, so Amazon is the second rise of wet shaving besides Reddit and the Facebook groups.
There's obviously the story of how you got started, Rafa, but then what I neglected to mention in my intro, and I apologize, is that you've collaborated on numerous soaps, and you've also designed and kind of come up with a few soaps on your own. So how did you get to the point of getting into wet shaving, find out what you like, to I want to have, I want to help kind of get this soap into existence. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into that?
Yeah, I did mention to you both before that I had a pretty interesting story. So what happened was I was after being in the rabbit hole for a couple of months or maybe years, not months, must have been years. I don't know the timeline, but I was on the BST groups on Facebook. I used to be part of all the groups, like everybody tries to be posting the same shape of the day in all the groups for the same people to see, which is at some point seems insane to me. But if you do it, that's okay. And I was looking through the BST and I saw a Mickey Lee Soapworks soap called Coco Maya. And it was used, and I don't know if the guy wanted like 15 for it. And at that point, I thought, what's used soap 15? So I messaged him, hey, can I get it for like 15 shipped? That thing. It either was a rare soap at the time, I don't know, or he was just playing hardball or thinking he must really want it. I'm going to keep pushing for the full 15 plus the shipping. So I was so irritated with that transaction that I was used to like, yeah, man, sure, whatever. Like whenever I sold on BST, it was like to move. If it was worth $50, 35 shipped. Like, let's just 30 shipped. Let's go. And so I was so irritated that at some point I saw that Oleo Soapworks was doing custom scents. Like you could buy a custom scent soap for like 25 or something. And I decided, hey, I'm going to ask Vida if she can make me a soap similar to a cocoa inspired. It was cocoa inspired. I've never smelled Coco Maya. So it was just like, I kind of want a cocoa scent and I want to design my own, Aztec type Maya design influenced label. So that's kind of what happened. I asked Vida, hey, if you do this custom, can I design the label? Like, can I send you the art and you print it? And she's like, yeah. And then it kind of snowballed. And a few other friends I was showing them the label I had made. And they're like, hey, I want one too. So we ended up making a little quick small batch. I don't even know what it was, like 30 soaps. They're numbered. I don't know what they were now. The original ones up in the shelf. So that's kind of how I got the ball rolling. I had friends who wanted it. We got a little pre-sale, and I'm sure Vida was happy because she was expecting to just make one soap. And now it was kind of cool that she was doing something that was going to be like a collaboration without at the time knowing it was a collaboration. I didn't say, hey, I want to collaborate with an artisan. Mm-hmm. That word wasn't in my vernacular, although I knew of others in the past that had done collaborations with older art, like Shaver Heaven or whatever that was called.
Yeah.
People were doing things. It was just not on my radar at all. So that's technically how it started, is because somebody would not sell me Coco Maya at a lower price than I wanted.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that was your first soap. I remember, maybe on Instagram, you probably posted it up, or maybe other folks, when they received it, were sharing it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Your designs have a particular look and
bad lighting, as you mentioned. But yeah, this is the second release of, I called it Chocolate. So you can see.
And so for audio listeners at home, so Rafa was showing off his first design. I'll put in the show notes a link to check it out. That's the skull motif. You would say that has become very much part of your calling card, right?
Yeah, and definitely not by accident, but it's just seeped into the labels and the designs I was making, because I've always had an affinity for skulls. I have a few behind me. I have many skull-inspired art tattooed on me. I mean, I won't show you, but there's a lot of skulls in my house. So yeah, in general, I've always been drawn to skulls as a way for myself to know and remember I'm mortal and not really fear death. Although when the time comes, I'm sure I'm going to be super afraid to die and no longer exist and, whatever. But that's kind of what draws me to it, is whatever I'm scared of, I just try to face.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I had no idea that's how you got, you stumbled into the collaboration process by accident, very much so. So if that was your first soap, then I'm guessing the next soap was a more kind of premeditated, as far as we're going to go in, do pre-orders. You had, I'm guessing, another scent in mind that you wanted to see in a soap. Is that generally kind of how that creative process went?
Yeah, that's definitely how it went. And actually escalated because the more people saw the original chocolate release, a lot of people say, hey, we want one. Why did you make so few? And I'm thinking, like, it was just for my friends. But we weren't trying to make a line product, right? Like an oleo product. And then we did a second batch. And then Pasteurs, however you pronounce it, wanted some. So she sent them some. So we had some in their shop. And
oh, wow.
That's when I'm like, oh, wait, well, people kind of like it. And then I thought, well, maybe people like it because the art's a little bit edgier. It's kind of like what some people might want. You know, old school or traditional men might think that doesn't look retail clean. It doesn't look, you know, down the middle. But then I knew other people would really like something like that. So that's when I tried to pretty much put those two together. How do I put something that looks edgy, but something that looks nostalgic for an older crowd? And then that's where I designed Dapper Man. I designed Dapper Man to have that old school retro feel, but I superimposed a skull face on the man so that it still gave it that edge. But then Dapper Man, Dapper Dan just flowed off the tongue. So I know that's kind of how that came to existence. Is I wanted that, and I had a scent in mind. And then I eventually approached Vida and said, hey, would you want to do something again? And she was more than willing and interested in doing something like that.
Oh, and remind me, what was the scent inspiration for Dapper Man?
The scent inspiration for Dapper Man was Beach Hut Man by Amouage. So that's still one of my favorite scents that I have.
Rafa, do you think you're kind of ahead of the curve though, as far as getting niche scents into the wet shaving world?
I wouldn't say so.
No?
No, I wouldn't say so. There's been other people who had been using a little bit more niche scents in some of their colognes. I mean, some of their soaps. The inspiration wasn't to piggyback off of them doing that, but it was literally on me loving the scent and trying to figure out how I can get that into a soap in my den with a design. So I definitely don't want to take credit for that at all, because no, it's just that I had exhausted my interest in designer scents.
Okay.
And at the time when I was doing that, there was 8 artisans that all had a Ventus, you know what I mean? So now no one's really doing a Ventus as much, but
I was gonna say there's still 376, artisans doing Aventus right now.
Jeez.
And that's cool.
I mean, it smells. No, I think that's an actual number. That sounds correct. But
fact check.
So no, I definitely cannot take credit for that or pretend that I was the first at all. It was just a scent. And at the time, I didn't think niche versus designer. I just thought, I want this scent. How do we get those oils? How do we get somebody to put those oils in a soap?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I could just chime in, something that I found kind of within the community, and it sounds like your story kind of mirrors this, is that when someone creates something, that usually will garner support and interest among your friends and things like that. And so, it was, one of our last episode, John and I talked about FOMO, the fear of missing out. But in this case, people are just like, man, that's awesome. I do want to grab that, I would love to have that in my den, support the product, and stuff like that. And is that a factor in what makes you continue to do stuff like that nowadays?
I want to say it's definitely on my mind. It's still definitely on my mind to create something that my friends would like to see and support. It's not as big of a motivator as before, only because over time, this expectation of all of my friends to buy one of my drops or whatever I created gets overwhelming, and it's been getting overwhelming with as many things as I started to do. So then it kind of puts a burden on them that if they don't buy it, then they don't support me or not my friend. And that's not the case. I would tell them, hey man, don't buy this one. It looks really cool, but just the scent might not be as strong, or the scent might not be for you. I'm gonna send you a sample. So I kind of stopped doing that with that in mind, because then it feels like, hey man, guess what I'm doing here? It started to feel like a door-to-door salesman. Mm-hmm. And that's part of my philosophy, is to not push the soap, sales aren't above all for me. So that's pretty much kind of how it's evolved, where it's not necessarily driven just by, I want to do this so my friends buy it. They have the ability to, but if they don't, no hard feelings. So it's pretty much now it's been narrowed down to designs that I think a certain amount of people, whether they're my friends or not, or strangers, certain people might be drawn to, but that ultimately it's something that I would be happy with in my own disc shaving den. That's kind of how I have to approach it now, because I would take suggestions and opinions, and at some point, if it's not what I kind of want, and people are going to criticize it and not like it anyways, at least I know I'm happy with what I did, versus try to please everyone and then people don't like it anyways. So, and that was a long-winded answer, but
No, I mean, I think that approach, though, I mean, you could say, so that's, if that was your kind of philosophy behind the soaps that you're putting out, the collaborations there, I feel like that overlaps with same thing, kind of like when you know your design is kind of, ready for game time, right? It's like you would be happy to display it, I'm guessing, in your own shave den, in your own portfolio of work, right? You wouldn't just leave it as is, like, oh, that's, that's 75% done, but it's good enough. I feel like you push for that complete, at least for as the creator, that
yes,
seal of approval, right?
Yes, and there is limitations to that. Sometimes some of the work that I do is just for hire and commissioned, so it's their vision, what they want,
right,
at a certain fee. Then I spend 8-10 hours on something, versus when I do something that's what I consider a straight collaboration that I pretty much thought up into existence. Then, that sometimes I spend 20-25 hours just doing the art, refining it, doing the setting labels, testing, So it's when it's my true collaboration, I have some control of how much can I fine tune it? When is it actually done? What is it that I wanted to see? What did I want to execute that I couldn't do skill-wise, but I went out and learned how to do it during the process of making a label.
I see. And I don't think we touched upon this, right? But is graphic design, is that would you say that's more kind of something you got into on your own, or is it something that you do full-time?
Oh yeah, it's definitely a side hobby. I work in the healthcare industry, so I have no formal graphic design training.
Okay.
I think I stumbled upon Adobe Suite. Somebody had it, they gave it to me, and then it was like a trial, I think, and I liked it, and I fiddled around, and then I ended up just buying one long time ago with a .edu discount. If you have a .edu, you can buy student rate software. So that's how I got it, and it was just me fiddling around with it. I never even touched the Photoshop. I had no idea that was daunting. It was just the Illustrator part, and then I kind of stopped, and it wasn't until this kind of came up that I said, let me see if I can still mess around with things and try. And that's kind of how I got into it. But it's basically me doing this stuff sometimes from 11 at night to like 2 a.m., 3 a.m. when my family's sleeping, so I don't wake them up, or I'm not taking the family time away. But yeah, this is definitely not my profession, and I'm only trying to get better every single project. And it's pretty much all thanks to YouTube. So
you mean as far as like tutorials and like
tutorials and training, and how to do this, and it's pretty much a credit to YouTube.
Shout out to YouTube. All right. Offering free information and free tutorials.
And podcasts too.
There we go. The check's in the mail.
No. Well, I mean, for something that you're just learning, may started out as a hobby, and then kind of had this project these projects, right, to kind of fine tune it. I have to say, but I think it's really beautiful. I did not know that Pasteurs had ordered, some from the early run.
Chocolat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. It's just like, it's different. It's different. It would definitely pop. It pops online. So on a store shelf, I can imagine someone passing by with, it might not be for everyone, like you said, right? But if you just appreciate, just graphic design art, something that looks nice, your label work definitely stands out. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job there. Yeah.
I mean, I kind of equate it to, for example, I don't want to name someone personally, but artisan brush makers. I mean, some of people's early work is like, oh, that's okay. You're doing it. You like the hobby. You're trying it. But then as you see some of those same people evolve, and they're doing, top tier work where you're like, wow. And then they're like, yeah, I'm a regular guy too. I have a job, I have a family, and I just have a shed, and I happen to do this. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Just you learn the craft and get better as you turn out thousands of brushes. The only thing I don't have the benefit is for an artisan, if they're testing soaps, they sometimes have, version 1, version 2, but they're selling it. Not like all the time, right? There's iterations of it and you fine tune it. But sometimes you're like, this year I have the beta and this year I have whatever name,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to say names because I don't want to call people out like I'm criticizing them. Or brush makers. Here's this flawed brush for half off. I don't really get to do that. That's the one difference. I don't get to say, hey, here's this half-ass label. It's not that great, but I'm going to make, I don't know, some money on it. Anybody want it? So that's the one difference is that I don't get that.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of pitch you an idea. I don't know if you'll ever be able to do it, but you should just do a design completely in Crayola crayon, like real Crayola crayon, and then just like send that to them and see if they'll scan it and put it on.
Some people might put it on. I have my son help me.
Rafa, there's one thing that you mentioned earlier, or at least it reminded me of, in that you took a break from social media, or at least I know on Instagram, and I feel like it was coupled with something that you mentioned that kind of deals with financial, fiscal responsibility, about even like when you're putting out a soap and you have friends, like, you straight up have said, don't buy my soap, unless like you love the scent, etc. Could you share a little bit about that story?
Yeah, no problem. To the shaving world, it was perceived as I left social media. I mean, I've always had 2 Instagrams, a personal and a design or a shaver. Yeah. I've always had 2 Facebooks. I mean, now it's been maybe 3 years without Facebook, right? But when I had my shaver account, where I was all in the groups, and then I had my personal account, and only some friends would cross between the 2. So I didn't take a break from social media, but social media in the wet shaving world, that is correct. And it was because I was getting into that, like you guys mentioned earlier, FOMO state. Like, this and that's, look at this thing came out, and then this thing came out, and I kind of want to try this. And at some point, I'm like, I'm spending too much time over here. I'm spending too much time all being money out instead of money coming in. So that's when I decided to, and I had been doing some designs and collaborations as Xicano shaver. Then I decided, why don't I just take a break? And I was going to cancel my account and then come back. And what happened was I just said, I didn't even know I could reactivate my old account. I reactivated it and changed the name and took off all my shave of the day pictures. So I'm not like advertising other artisans anymore. And pretty much that was the inception of Xicano Design when I came back. And if people who happen to scroll through my Instagram, especially if you're on your phone right now, if you scroll down, you'll see a 9-square art of, it says Xicano shaver, and it's the art. But now the new logo of that had the eyes X'd out. My old one had the brushes in the eyes.
Oh, okay.
The eye sockets. So the X'd out, the X bone meant Xicano shaver is dead. And then that was kind of how the rebirth of the page and Xicano Design came to be, was that part is over. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be focusing on just designing and how I can help other artisans with labels or logos. So yeah, it was definitely just that. It was just too much money going out, me wanting too much. And just the more you get involved, the more it sucks you in, as everyone knows. Most of the people listening to this are probably in that same boat. I mean, how else would you stumble upon a shaving podcast? You have to probably be looking for it or know about it. Mm-hmm. But it was financially because I had a son. I had a son, and I thought, I'm spending too much money on soap. I should really be saving it or spending on him. It wasn't necessarily, it wasn't hurting the pockets, but it just didn't seem responsible. Like when I don't need soap. I had so much soap. Everyone had so much soap. It's insane. So that's what it was about, was how can I get money? How can I generate income versus always spending it? So it doesn't sound very romantic, but it's just sometimes you have to step away from, right? You have to step away from the love of the hobby and say, well, what can I do to be involved and not limited to spending money or being a consumer? And that's why you guys are here. You guys like, I love this, but I can't fight with somebody on Reddit or Facebook groups about this all day. Let me start a podcast with my friend and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I would say that I'm probably in the same boat as where you were, expecting like my first in March in a couple months. But yeah, just like looking, I'm just like, man, that is so much soap. And then you kind of see it not just as soap or shaving products, you see it like as the dollar amount. Oh, that's like $10, that's $15, it's $20. Oh my gosh, I have like $400, $500, $600 that could have went to such and such a thing that I need, because I definitely don't need all this soap, or whatever it might be. And yeah, I think definitely, like being financially, fiscally responsible is important and everything. And at the same time, you adjusted how you are involved within the hobby, within the community and things like that. And it just might be a way for some of us to kind of get like, an eye-opening thing to say, yeah, maybe I should do the same thing also.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I definitely don't want to create camps of people who, be fiscally sound and don't. I love the hobby and spend. I mean, we all have vices. We all spend money on something anyways. If your thing is soap and it's not hurting your wallet or your family or not, you don't have to wait for a paycheck and you have that disposable income. I'm not saying it's wrong. Do it. Who cares?
Oh, for sure.
There's some people that can afford amazing razors and brushes. I have my friend, he knows who he is, but he has amazing hardware, like some of the best. But he has it like that. So that's fine. You know what I mean? And even to some people, that's relative. Some people are like, oh, that's what you collect? $500 razors? Well, I have $500,000 cars. Like, it's all relative to your income and what your, and your interest. People have guns, cigars. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I'm for
one Lamborghini for everything in wet shaving.
Exactly. Pretty easy decision there. So yeah, I don't think my way of thinking or point of view is the correct way. I just feel that if you need to look at things that way to have less stress in your life and ultimately make you happier, maybe you should give it a try. Just don't buy soap for a while. But yeah, if even if you do, whatever, that's great. So whatever makes someone happy. I'm not posing, as someone who knows more than anyone else. Someone has said everything I've said probably 7 years ago. I mean, everything cycles from how you get into the rabbit hole to how you get back off to how you dabble back in to how you find a happy medium and you're just toggling. I like the hobby, but I'm not going to go FOMO. You know what I mean?
You're right. It goes in cycles, and it's not necessarily new information. But Rafa, I don't think there are that many people that take or at least share kind of that part of the hobby as openly, because it's a little different. Like, I think a lot of people are like, they're making purchases, they're hiding it from their spouse, they're hiding it from themselves, and they don't realize how much they've spent. So I never took it as you going on a soapbox and you're like, you are spending too much, you need to stop doing this. That was never your perspective. That's not how me and Gerard want to kind of come off that way either. It's just that it's good to be self-aware, and if you're not aware of exactly how you're engaging in the hobby, that message and sharing kind of your story about it, I think it's a good. I don't know. It's a good check-in for yourself, and especially if you have something like children. Being in the same boat, Gerard will be in that same boat. That's such a good reality check. You're like, well, I could get my kid something really nice, or get myself my 18th brush or something like that. It's a good message, and I think it needs to be out there a little bit. It needs to be out there a little more, because it's also more, I guess, extreme way to kind of pull back from the hobby. But I'm very much for it, and because if you're on Instagram, if you're on Facebook, whatever it is, and you're seeing shave of the days, right? It's kind of the subtle way where you're like, oh, I could really use that soap. Oh, I could really use that razor. I want to try this. I want to try that. You don't know it, but as you're looking at these nicely framed photos, that's other ways of kind of like a soft marketing to you. No one is necessarily, it doesn't have to be from the artisan, right, or anything like that, but it's still making you want to buy something else.
Yeah, 100%. And it is marketing. And, that's why I would joke. I would say, hey, like for Razor Ruby, I said, anybody, they did a giveaway and we said, whoever posts this, blah, 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 hashtag, thank you for advertising for me. Like I said it out loud and I put it out in public as a joke, but also like, this is what we do, just so you guys know. But that's why we give away a $20 soap. It's the amount of advertising you get from reposting it's worth way more than $20. Mm-hmm. But I'm not afraid to say it because I still try to be on that hobbyist consumer side. I kind of ride that line. You know, I'm not a real artisan. I don't have my business connected to. I'm not an LLC, and I'm not just straight consumer. So I'm like in the middle where I try to see both sides, and I understand the cost and the work that goes into doing something. But I understand, like, let's keep it $20. What's 25? Okay, so you take in a little bit less. Like, I mean, that's a big jump, but in general, let's pay a little more for that better label. Let's pay for better tub. Let's do that, you know? So I got to try to toe the line in the middle and see both sides.
Yep.
Rafa, before, like, you know, like, we kind of started contacting one another about like doing all this. There's a phrase that I mentioned, we feast with our eyes first. It's kind of a phrase you see in like food and cooking and things like that. So that, just kind of like a little background idea, that for people who may not be into foods, they are usually more open to it if it looks presentable, if it looks pretty, right? It becomes more palatable for them. And I think very much the same can be made in terms of wet shaving and in any line, you know. It's like product design is important, like millions of dollars, you know, companies have departments just for like their labeling and packaging and things like that. Kind of just wanted to maybe gather like your thoughts, maybe on the consumer side, to where, like, you know, is there stuff where the design caught your eye first and led to the purchase? And
yeah,
like,
100%.
How important is that, you know, in your work?
For me, as a consumer or as the design?
Both.
Okay, so as a design, obviously it's 100%. It means a lot. I say that knowing that especially with my collaborations, I intend for a scent to be enjoyed, and I always try to partner with a great artist with a great base. You know, it's not like, oh, look at this design, it looked really great, but then you get it in your den and you're kind of disappointed with everything. Subjective matters are different. If you didn't like the scent, I'm so sorry. You know, things like that. It's like, well, you can't please it all anyways. But in terms of if I have a lot of say with the artisan in the collaboration, I want the design to pop. I want it to be liked and translate my vision. But I also want you to get the soap in your hand and shave with it and be like, yeah, I didn't just buy the design. Like this, I actually like the scent. Or I didn't like the scent, but man, this artisan has an amazing base. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I do it on the design end. But on the buying end, whenever I do buy things, 100%, it's got to look great. If someone says, hey, here's this weird tub that has a weird lip, or if you brush your brush bangs because it's the old school thick tubs, it's smaller, it doesn't line up with the rest of my soap, but the base is incredible. Maybe I'd still get that if it's a scent that I don't have that I've always wanted. But otherwise, I'm like, well, I'll pass. Let me get something that looks great, because it's part of the experience. Like, just like you said, even the shave of the day, taking the joy, say, oh, when I put this picture, this is awesome, and the colors on this label. If it's just like a plain label, you probably aren't going to be thrilled to set it up and get some lighting and take a perfect picture and put the brush a certain way and use a certain brush that's a certain colorway to match. You know, people color coordinate the whole shave sometimes. So if the whole thing,
guilty.
and that's cool, and I mean that's super cool. And if it just doesn't appeal to you, it doesn't spark the experience where you open it. Like, yeah, man, that's a cool label. I remember why I bought that. That's cool. You open it and you smell it, and it's part of the whole experience. So as a consumer, I also would not buy something that I do not think pops. I think everything. I mean, I don't want to name people. I don't know. I mean, I used to talk to Stefan a little bit, but I like everything the Holy Black does. I like everything. I mean, they got some pros. They got some like actual visual marketing pros back over there. or
Yeah,
they hire pro. I don't know.
John and I were talking about that, like, I think a while back. I don't have any of the Holy Black products, but yeah, like when they take their product photos, when they like packaging, I was just like, man, like this stuff, like this is top tier stuff because it just looks so good. It makes you just like, I just want to grab it, for that reason alone.
Yeah, definitely. I own owned a little bit of the Holy Black. I've never bought one of their big expensive sets. Too much money for my pocket. I actually, now I'll just a little quick segue. I actually don't even follow the Holy Black on Instagram. There's a lot of people I don't follow just to not be influenced. Because it would suck if they come out with something and I'm like, oh, I somehow kind of made it look similar. And that's one thing that you hate to happen. But yeah, everything they do is great, in my opinion, right? I'm not an expert or professional, so even that, it doesn't matter. It's still subjective.
Would it be fair to kind of just like ask, like any artisans, like you are a fan of like their packaging, or you're just like, man, like I really do enjoy their stuff?
Yeah, I'll say I like tallow and steel. I like the soap. I like the base. I like their designs. I like I said, I haven't kept up a lot, but I remember liking like Sicily or Maya or Kyoto, I think it was. Like I kind of like that clean, the look. I like almost, you can tell Noble Otter hired someone professional because I like Noble Otter stuff. I wish some of the stuff was bigger. Like sometimes it's really small in the center, but that's just, it's nothing. I really like, let me see, who else do I really like? I should really just, I was going to say flip to Instagram. I didn't make a list. I didn't make a list on purpose because I didn't want to, I don't want to like make a list of my favorite. These doesn't mean they're my favorites. Yeah. I almost don't even own any. I only own 2 tallow and steels. Like, I don't buy so much.
No, but like to talk about design, and like regarding those 2 off the top of my head, they have consistent theming, with both of them. Like I think tallow and steel, they use very much the same like fonts, in their packaging. Same thing with Noble Otter. Noble Otter, you always have the otter in the center, and it's usually designed around whatever the soap, like is and things like that. There's definitely consistency. And so you kind of know, you kind of just see that line, and you can follow that thread among all the releases.
Yeah. And I just want to say real quick before I forget, Barrister and Man. I like how their stuff looks. It's evolved. You can see they either have different artists that do it or teams, or I don't know who, but you can see how it was okay, and then it got better, and then like it's always evolving. It's always nice. I like that it's not always consistent. I like how they have like the reserve line and that has a look. I mean, that stuff is pretty cool. I mean, there's just a lot of people doing really nice things. But I also can appreciate someone like Sterling. I mean, they have a clean template that has a formula. They'll change the colors. They'll change like the little icons if it's, I don't know, whatever, for needle. I don't know. I mean, that's not one, but they'll change the icons to match the name, or a scent note or a theme with the name. So I still appreciate stuff like Sterling. Like that's just clean retail type of packaging that I could do, but I don't do in terms of collaborations because it's, I don't own a line. If I owned a line, I maybe would do something a little bit more across the board. I know, Gerard, you asked me about, did I ever see the British coins? Oh, yeah. I think it was, right?
Yeah.
How you piece them together and it creates pretty much a big shield or something.
Yeah,
right?
to kind of like just like explain that for people that don't know, we're talking about design in other outlets and other avenues. And so if you look at British currency, all of their coins kind of come together like Voltron and form this like emblem for the country. And you see that a lot. It's also in Mexican currency in their coins. And I think maybe the shaving equivalent of something with consistency would be like, I don't know, like old VHS tapes, which turned into DVDs and now Blu-rays, where the spine will, kind of like you put like 10 movies together and the spines will make like a super image, like to show either some consistency like that, or or just where everything is similar, similarly lined up, similar things like that. I think this is just like offhand. I remember I saw it just this week. Game of Thrones released their box set, for all of 8 of their seasons. 7 seasons are perfectly lined up, and the text for season 8 is like up like half an inch, and I was triggered. I was just like, that. I'm like, oh, it's just it would just
Why would they do that?
This is the silliness, folks. Sorry if this just sounds totally ridiculous.
It's not.
But, OCD, people who have OCD will totally understand, that element. But yeah, I think that, good design is maybe something that we don't always think about right away, but when we notice it, it just stands out, and it allows us to, it draws us in, if you will.
Yeah, and you better believe that someone or lots of people on that Game of Thrones art team are also pissed about it. I'm sure it's no one's fault, but some weird manufacturing decision somebody made, like, oh, this company would do it for this much. You know what I mean? They'll print these casings for the DVDs. That's like the behind the scenes stuff. It's like sometimes I want to do things, and if it's not me being a full collaborator where it's my vision, someone's like, oh, can you do this? I'm like, but that's not how my design was intended. No, but I want this, and then I'll do something that gets changed or diluted. So I'm pretty sure that's what happened to Game of Thrones, and that's why the last season is a quarter of or half an inch off. It's the designer who had that vision is probably pissed and probably threw away all the DVDs and hates Game of Thrones now. But yeah, in terms of who else I like, I mean, I really like that Australian private. What's it called?
Yeah.
I don't love. I'm just saying, like, as I was in the hobby throughout the years, that was one I used to be like, oh, that looks pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Or what's that? They came out with that Halloween Bloodbath. No, that's Dr. John, I think.
Blood Oath. That's Dr. John, right? Blood Oath is Dr. John's.
No. I don't know, man. I forget, like Phoenix and Bew or something, or
Phoenix and Bow. Yeah.
Phoenix and Bow. Yeah, that. I mean, they have cool stuff all the time. Yeah. And I'm probably missing tons. I didn't come with a list. I didn't want to curate a list.
Quick disclaimer: if you have great design and we didn't mention you, we're not singling you. We're not Xing you out. We simply just don't have the memory.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to make it seem like I'm hating or I don't know. I spoke to Rod once in my life. I don't know Phoenix and Bow. I don't know Private Reserve, whatever the heck the other one is. I don't know these people. I don't know Talon Steel. I've never spoken to them. So I'm not saying it for plug purposes. I've never talked to Will in my life. I just like B&M. So
good.
The art. I don't own lots of the soaps. So anyways, before I get a bunch of messages saying, why aren't you comment?
All right.
So yeah, those are just a few off the top of my head. I mean, Lather Bros is another. I love Lather Bros. I love what he does. I love what I don't know his name, sorry, but I love what they do. I think he does the work, and it's just another inspiration really on how something can really pop. And he does great themes, and his just I don't know if they're shutting down. I saw, but anyways, I love Lather Bros art, and those just are a few that just come to the top of my head. And anybody can like anything. There are other artists and people are coming out with their own themes, their own labels, and if that's just your thing, then that's great to you. Art's super subjective, so. But yeah, there's just a very few that I can pinpoint from early on in the hobby. I don't really know any new artisans per se that much anymore. I don't really look too much, like I said before, so that I'm not influenced.
All right, guys. One last topic that I want to hit up before we close out the show was where would you like to see design as far as in the world of wet shaving? Where would you like to see that go in this coming year? It could be something big, something small. One thing I know we talked about that stood out for me was consistency. And even, I guess it really links, my marketing brain can't turn this off, but it's stronger branding, right? So if you have a particular look, whether it's like using a template, whether there's some binding factor. I mean, I think that's one way that overall design can improve, where it's not a bunch of random, it could be nice pieces, but something that's a little more tied together. I think it brings up professionality, but it's not a huge step to take. I think for whoever's doing design work, even if it's the artisan themselves. So for me, that's one thing I'd like to see further improvement on.
Yeah, definitely consistency. I just think it also is almost like a signature for certain things. We had mentioned like Sterling earlier. It's like, I just know when I'm going to see that green tub. Like, I don't even have to see the label yet. Like, but that's like their signature. Whether it was like Noble Otter, when I see the artwork, the fact that you can just post the label art and already generate like hype around like a product release. Yeah, it just shows consistency. It shows things like that. And I think you see that everywhere in different industries and stuff like that too. It doesn't surprise me that those same elements would seep its way into the wet shaving world and whatnot. And I think other artisans are going to be realizing that, just how important that is, because it'll become like part of their digital signature, their marketing signature.
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. But I do see it as well. Just kind of jumping off what you said, I definitely like the universal clean approach. But I think if I was an artisan, I would have that, but I'd have to be diverse. The diversity I would need would be, okay, I have my calling card, I have my look, it's easily identifiable. But then there's nothing wrong with, for a small section of the shaving community who likes these one-offs, these not, I don't want to say special edition or limited edition, no, but let's call it a one-off. Mm-hmm. It's kind of one-off, like collaborator, he went out and got great artwork from someone. For example, Noble Otter does that. They have their template when they do their own like side batches, and then they'll like handwrite in the name. Barrister Man has clean lines, but also they'll come out with the What's It or whatever the Dr. Seuss inspired release. That's definitely not in line per se with them. And I was once told by an artisan that most of what they sell, you don't see it in Shave of the Days, or people aren't posting it. So we get to see the tip of the iceberg of the hobbyists who are down the rabbit hole, who are on Reddit, who are on Facebook, who are on Instagram, who are posting pictures of their bathroom setup. But there's a vast majority of people who don't do that. Mm-hmm. And what they probably want is a good soap, a good scent. Cool art would be nice, but in general, I believe still that the masses want a clean, retail looking like design. So I think, I don't know, I think it will change how artisans start looking at artwork, perhaps, and that at least if they want that formatted template, that at least that looks super clean and it's super eye appealing, and they've contracted great marketing firms to do this for them, professionals or whoever wants to do it. So I believe that it will help, because if people are voting with their dollars, then like, oh, good, those kind of designs are helping sales, along with my great base, maybe I should invest a little bit more into the design. But so that's where I think I see it going, where it's always this organic beast where it's going to change. It's going to change based on generations. I mean, maybe in 10 years, maybe more of the old schoolers who don't care about design as much, or, the different tastes people have, or the type of communities involved, or the area, New York versus California, there's different tastes all around. So I don't want to predict what's happening. I have no idea what's going to happen, but what I do know is that overall, it does help step the game up, because as you've seen, if you guys have referenced yourself, the soap base itself has been stepped up in general, and now it's not 3 people doing amazing. You can pick from like 15, and they're pretty close. You're not going to be disappointed. So now, what sets you apart from those 15 great 90 plus, score according to Ruds? We'll go off Ruds. I love Ruds. That's the only shout out. So it's just going to go like, well, what else can set you apart? Well, the next logical thing is the packaging, because you feast with your eyes, as you said. So in terms of containers, like package, everything, I think it's just, it also shows a respect for the consumer, in my opinion, if you're gonna put time and dedication into how everything looks. Now I get it, if you're a startup artisan, sometimes you can't go full steam ahead. You kind of start an inch away, but I do think it's gonna help design of the labels to catch people's eyes. Definitely doesn't have to be my designs. Mine are, very segmented portion of the wedge shaving community that like kind of my stuff. Some people hate my stuff. Some people hate skulls. They're like, what skulls have to do with shaving? What does anything have to do with shaving? What does taking a picture of your razor have to do with shaving? You know what I mean? So it's whatever somebody wants to do that makes their experience better. And for the artisan, it's going to be, how can I get more buys? How can I get more clicks? How can I get people more interested in my soap? Maybe websites start to get stepped up. That's a big thing. Bill from Murphy McNeil, he has his standard line, but he loves, if we do a collab, he likes like, oh, I'm going to pop this and I'm going to have it be a one-off. So things like those. Riley from First Line Shave has theirs. And then he honors me with doing a collab, and boom, he has one that doesn't look like his line. So I think being able to have the diversity in your arsenal, where in your catalog, where you have the template, the standard, a clean retail, a feel, and then have one-offs, it just opens you up. It just opens you up to different tastes, different preferences, and being able to get that base, because as you guys know, it's a blind buy hobby pretty much for probably 98% of the people. Get that base in their hands first, and then when they go ahead and try it out, they're going to be like, wow, this is great. Now let me check out the other stuff. I don't care what the design looks like. I need that scent. I need that base. So that's kind of not necessarily a prediction, because I can't, it's always organic, how people change and taste, and who knows, but I do believe that it's very important to respect the consumer and try to pop out the best product. So yeah, and sometimes there's just hiccups and learning curves and obstacles and printing mishaps and shipping delays, and so that kind of stuff sucks. But I'm starting to see myself on Instagram, people trying to raise their shave of the day photography picture game up a little. Just that alone. I used to see one or two guys doing these amazing things. Now a lot of guys have got cool setups. So just all of that, the visuals and the way you take in information, is being stepped up a little bit across the board, in my opinion. And I think it'll continue, but it should never be the main focus at all.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your thoughts. Yeah, I think especially coming from the design perspective, I was really curious to hear kind of like, what do you like to see prediction, or you call predictions, or just like trends or whatnot. But I just want to thank you for sharing those. Also, as we're just closing up the show, Rafa, thank you for your time today, for coming on. I really enjoyed hearing about how you got into wedge shaving and ultimately how you got into this whole design thing. I really look forward to kind of what projects you have coming out in 2020 and for however long you care to do this. I think it'll always kind of catch people's eyes. So as we're signing off, Rafa, where can people find you online, and anything you'd like to plug?
You can find me on Instagram, Xicano_Design, and I have nothing. I just really came on here, but it was perfect timing. New year. I have nothing coming up. I have nothing to plug, and that's it. Like, I didn't want to come out here to plug in. I literally have nothing. I mean, things, nuggets and seeds in the back of my mind that are churning and are always churning, but there's nothing really I have to try to sell anyone. I'm not selling anything.
No worries. But at the very least, check out Rafa's Instagram. You can see some of the label work that he's done on top of whatever notes, links in the notes I include. And Gerard, can you also let people know where they can find you online? Also, anything you'd like to plug of your own or otherwise?
Hey Gerard Shaves, all one word. If you're looking, this is Christmas present from my wife. So I showed the guys earlier.
Yeah.
So hey Gerard Shaves. I think in 2020, I mean, nothing to plug. We mentioned last time, but I'm just like thankful, and I'm kind of curious where this whole thing's going to lead us. But any questions, any comments, anything like that, anything, please just like drop it in the comment box below on YouTube or wherever it may be. Thank you.
So
Yeah, thank you both.
Yeah.
Thank you both for letting me be on your podcast. This is the first one I've ever done. Probably will be the last unless you guys have me back. But yeah, it's just been pretty organic. You guys are really fun, and I like your points of views, and can't wait for that episode where you guys disagree on something.
It'll happen.
Battle it out. Yeah, I'll be the mediator on that one.
Okay. Well, we'd love to have you again, but yeah, we do thank you for the time, for your time today. If you guys do want to, for the listeners at home, thank you so much for listening through the episode. If you want to chime in, if you have any questions for Rafa, for myself, or Gerard, you can hit us up on Twitter at Lather Talk. We also have an email, lathertalkpodcast@gmail.com. So thank you, Rafa. Thank you, Gerard. And thank you, listeners, for your time today. We'll catch you next time. Take care. Thank you for listening to Lather Talk. If you enjoyed the episode, you can help the show by subscribing to the podcast and leaving a 5-star review. We appreciate your time and support and hope to catch you next episode.